Om Shanti. Wish you all a very warm welcome. Thought of starting this evening with the reading from one of the personal diaries of our founder of this organization. It depicts his inner work, how that being of light behind that um, role used to speak to his mind as a king soul, and how it truly helped him attain that self sovereignty that is the birthright of every soul. The way the reading goes is the king soul speaks, O brother mind, my minister, I wish to have a private conference with you. It will be convenient to have it early in the morning. Mind says, Yes, Your Highness, I am ready. But from some time, I find some change, something exceptional in your attitude towards me. You are trying to impose some pressure upon me. However, I submit myself to you, King Soul. Okay, okay. We'll decide tomorrow morning what needs to be done. And this is such a beautiful insight for all of us. And why is that? Because today, the way our mind thinks is completely taking information through the eyes, taking information through the ears and the physical body sensations and thinking about it. It's like the mind is addicted to the input from the outside world. And from this experience, what we see is that the self sovereign, the king soul, is fully awake to give input to the mind, but with a lot of respect, with a lot of love, and with a lot of patience, not forcefully, not battling with the mind, and not arguing with the mind, but with authority, giving instructions to the mind. Because we hear a lot of uh, talk on power of the mind, but actually it is the power of the soul over the mind. It's not I think, therefore I am, but I am, therefore I think, which means the thoughts of the mind cannot define me. I exist before the thoughts of the mind, and I am that awareness that has the power to use the mind to think. But I don't need to think to exist. And it's a very beautiful uh, phenomenon and a very beautiful way to live in. And the way one sees it's like existence is at three levels, but the pure existence is the foundation of the other two levels. Without this pure existence, the other two levels don't even exist. And the three levels are: one is the physical world, which is constantly changing, moving, world of movement, world of sounds. Everything is in constant change. Nothing is wrong or right, but it's constantly changing. Then there is another world, which is a world of mind. And this mind is also a realm in which everything is changing, but it's more subtle than the physical. We have thoughts in this realm, there are judgments, interpretations, image of the self as this person in the mind. It exists at the level of the mind. There are feelings, there is fears, there is even feelings of love based on the identity of the person. So, a lot of things that are happening at the level of the mind, but they are also constantly fluctuating and changing. Can you imagine if we, the beings of light, whose nature is peace, are asleep and then we are trying to find peace through the mind or through the situations by manipulating and controlling the situations in the physical world, which are not in our hands, they're constantly changing. And that is a life of suffering because we're looking for peace in the wrong place. The being of light that I am is already peace. And that peaceful being that I am can see the peaceless mind. I don't have to get disturbed by the thoughts in the mind. I have the power to detach from the mind, just like we saw in this reading. Being detached from the mind, I can speak to the mind lovingly and guide it in the direction of the Supreme. Be a trustee of the mind. It is the third level, which is where the self sovereign exists. The being that is absolutely still is the real self, the real me. Even right now, is that the real me speaking through the mouth, using the physical organs? Or is it some self image in the mind that is speaking through the mouth? If it's the real me speaking, one won't be puppet conscious. If it's the real self speaking, then there will be absolute experience of non duality, only benevolence, selflessness, and desirelessness. Only truth will be expressed. So it's not like these three layers exist in isolation. We're not retreating from the other two. But what we are doing is that the being that I am, from that space of stillness and silence, from that space of being that embodiment of truth, is interacting with other two layers. Then I'm not a slave to my mind. I am interacting with the mind as a master. I, the inner being, then don't take sorrow or happiness from the ever changing thoughts of the mind. The inner being that I am can see the sadness and the crying of the mind, but not be disturbed or touched by it at all. My stage doesn't fluctuate with the fluctuations in the mind or in the drama, in the story world, in the physical world. It's like living in the eye of the storm. The being of light can be completely detached, be in that state of calmness, whilst there could be mental storms and storms of the physical world around. It doesn't mean I don't come into action. I do come into action, but I don't come into reaction. And that is why today the best way to heal the mind, which is right now ailing because the self-sovereign has forgotten himself. Acting as a master, even the mind is tired. He's a very obedient servant, the mind. It's just that the self-sovereign, the king of the mind, needs to be awake. And it's truly a game of a second because the king is the truth. Truth is not there 1 minute and next minute it's absent because it's forgotten. So the king's soul can see even the remembering and forgetting within the consciousness as a detached observer. As was mentioned, the king's soul can see not only the provocative situations in the story world, but also the provocative um, mental thinking process of the mind with complete simplicity, patience, stillness, and silence without being disturbed. And that is what emerges the beauty. In fact, I would say re emerges the true nature of the soul. The detachment of the king's soul from the mind allows the mind to be surrendered to God, be healed and nurtured by His light of truth. Once again, the mind remembers, not relearning, but remembering the truth of being a server to the King's soul, who belongs to the realm which is non physical, who belongs to one Father, the Supreme. And Supreme exists only at that non physical realm level. So, to connect with the Supreme, the King's soul has to be at that level with the Supreme King of Kings. And from there, use the mind according to God's directions. And mind is a very obedient child. It will listen. It just needs to be handled with love, patience, care, humility, not fighting or battling. If you're fighting or battling with mind, it's not the king's soul interacting with the mind. Fighting and battling and cursing and frustrated with the mind, it is the spiritual ego, self, or some other ego identity interacting with the mind. And mind is that interface which we use to interact with the physical world. So we need to really make sure that we take care of this interface. But only the awake one can do that. And it's very easy, not difficult. It's very easy to be who you are. So let's take this moment of silence and just be. There is nothing to do. Just be. Completely still being of light. You can see the movements of the physical world and the mind. A silent being who can hear the noise of the mind. but not take interest in it. Be disinterested. Be more interested in who you are and who do you belong to. Stay in the eye of the storm.